Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching KETK Plus. I'm your host, Tristan Van Beem, and today I have a pretty special interview for you all. Joining me in the KETK Plus studio is Congressman Wesley Hunt, representing the Republican Party as he enters the primary for the United States Senate. Elections are just around the corner here in Texas, and here at KETK, we want to bring you the latest coverage on our local leaders. Let's go ahead and bring him in and meet the congressman. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. How about you? Thank you for having me on, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you so much for Happy New Year to you as well. And I just want to say it is a pleasure to have you in the studio today, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So can you just start us off by giving some background? I hear that you're from the Houston area, and you also have quite the extensive experience in the military. So could you kind of just give me some background on yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah, born and raised in Houston, Texas. I come from a military family. My dad's a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. My sister is a West Point grad, first in my family, West Point class of 93, in which she went on to serve for 22 years active duty. I am a West Point grad, class of 2004. I served 8 years active duty as an Apache helicopter pilot, and now I have the honor of being a congressman in the area in Houston that I grew up in. My brother is also a West Point graduate, class of 2005. He went on to serve in the Navy for 5 years. So there's about 60 years worth of military service just in my immediate family. And when you grow up in a conservative, God-fearing, patriotic home like me, you realize that service is all we have and service is what matters. And my dad would always teach me about the importance of continuing to serve this great nation for every generation. Because if we don't preserve her and if we don't preserve our values and our way of life, then every generation we are doomed to lose it. And so it's up to us to ensure that we still have it for the future. And that's kind of my background that I grew up in. I'm a Southern Baptist guy. My mom made sure that we were in church twice a week, especially on Wednesdays and on Sundays. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And at the end of the day, if we are not furthering the kingdom, then I don't know what we're doing here on this earth. And so with those motivations, that's what got me in the race for United States Senate. And I'm absolutely proud to represent my home state, my hometown, and my country.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. In 60 years of military service in just your immediate family, that is absolutely very impressive. I just want to say thank you for your service and thank you to your family's service as well.
Thank you very much. It's an honor.
Of course. So I just want to open this interview up by asking, as the current congressman representing Texas's 38th district, what inspired you to run for U.S. Senate in the first place?
As I looked at, our state and I looked at kind of what was happening and looked at what happened with the America First movement and how, especially the primary here in Texas, how it has shifted toward an America First type policy, I realized that we needed a true conservative that can win the primary and win the general election against a Jasmine Crockett and actually do it without it costing us a lot. And what people have to realize is this is time for the next generation of leadership to step up and ensure that we continue to have the America First agenda in our country. Again, President Trump just won Texas in the last election by 15.7 points. That's really all you need to know. And I fear that our current senator doesn't understand how the electorate has shifted more toward America First policy, and he's just no longer there. And John Cornyn has been here for 24 years. So far, he has spent $70 million. He is still polling in third place in some polls, and he's polling in the 20s. And that just kind of lets you know that it's time for that next generation of leadership to step up. President Trump has surrounded himself with young patriots for the future, because this is just not about preserving the America First agenda for the next 3 years during his presidency. It's all about the next 6, 12, 18 years. That's why our vice president is 41 years old. Our secretary of war is 45 years old. Our secretary of state is in his early 50s, because President Trump knows that we need to groom the next generation to ensure that we actually have a future. And I put myself in that category. And as somebody that's in my early 40s, I've realized that now is the time to give my best years back to my country in order to ensure that my 7, my 5, and my 3-year-old have an America that I grew up in, but to just make it better for them and not just my children, but for every single child and grandchild in this great state and this great nation.
Okay, I like how you brought up that Senator Cornyn has about 24 years experience and you're kind of new to the game. Can you explain to me what kind of value that brings being a younger person coming in and wanting to run for the primary?
Of course. Well, this is about having the energy to do it. This is about having fresh ideas. This is about coming up under the America First banner with President Trump. And at the end of the day, again, I was the first person in the country to endorse President Trump. I was one of his top surrogates. I flew all over the country, not just with him, but on his behalf. And so I really spent a lot of time to ensure that we had President Trump back in one of the most consequential elections in the history of this country. And I'm so glad that I was able to do that because I cannot imagine a world where we would have a President Biden and President Harris and a Vice President Walz, especially given what's happened this past week. So again, me getting in this race and me understanding how important it was to not just represent my district, but to take somebody with these values statewide was absolutely critical. And yes, I had to give up my congressional seat to do it. But again, this is not about me being a career politician. I think those days are over. And if I'm really being honest with you, look, I believe in term limits. And even though we haven't signed a term limit pledge, and even though that's not necessarily something that many people will choose to do, I'm term limiting myself. It's time to get in this fight when we're young, when we're able, fight as hard as you can for a couple of terms, and then get out of the way and let somebody else get into the fight after it. And that's exactly what my generation represents, and that's what I'm going to do as your next United States Senator.
And another question I have is I love that you mentioned, not having a full career out of politics. And I just want to ask, what kind of inspired you to get into the political world anyway? I know you have a lot of experience in the military and everything, but what inspired you to want to run for office in Texas and really benefit your state that you love so much?
This is the house I grew up in, and the idea of continuing to serve. And even though I'm not serving necessarily in combat anymore as an Apache pilot, I have the honor of serving roughly 1 million people in my hometown. That's just the mantra of my family. But also, I want people to know that I've seen combat. I served with 14 of my West Point classmates that are no longer here. They gave their lives fighting in a global war on terror. And I get up every single day with the idea of figuring out how to continue to serve for them, because they're no longer here to serve for themselves. And that mantra is something that sticks with me every single day for their deaths, and not just theirs, but many patriots that gave their lives for this country throughout the generations of this nation need to continue to serve those people because they paid the ultimate sacrifice. By the grace of God, I was spared. And here I get to be living alive and well with my family in the greatest state in the union, but also I get to serve this country as a representative, run for Senate, and it's been paid for by the blood of my fallen classmates and many patriots. And so every day I get up with that motivation to continue to serve them. And I'm reminded every single morning when I leave to go to Washington and see my little kiddos that I have to ensure that they have a better future for them as well. There is no better cause and no better reason to continue to serve this country.
Wow, you said, I believe, personally, 14 people that you actually served with who are no longer with us. That's got to be a great motivator just to want to push you and do better in politics and honestly, whatever you do. Do you kind of have that same mindset in everything that you do that you've learned from the military and also your upbringing into what you do in politics and just honestly how you live your life in general?
I most certainly do. And a lot of this starts off with just work ethic. Anybody that follows us on our social media, we are hot and heavy and we are absolutely busy because we get up every single day with the idea of how can we continue to further our message and how can we improve our country and improve our lot in life. And if we don't get up with that kind of fire in the belly, well, then it's time to do something else. And I think that's why people in this country are looking for that next generation, because if you go, around the House and if you go around the Senate, it looks like a retirement community, and at some point it's time for some fresh ideas. It's time for a new look. It's time for, again, our generation to step up because we are the ones that are going to be making laws now, and we're still going to be around to reap the consequences of the laws that we make. And that's why it's so important for young people in their 40s and 50s to be engaged. I think our founding fathers set this whole thing up because they wanted young people to go to Washington and serve and then make laws. But the issue was this. You're not going to be there for your entire career. You're going to have to go back home and live with the laws that you've made. But when you've been around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you don't ever go back to live with the laws that you make. Consequently, you don't care what laws come out in the first place. And that's exactly what I am here to change. And I'm here to usher in that next generation of lawmakers under the America First mantra to ensure that we change the way business as usual is done in Washington.
Okay, well, now that we now have more of a background on you, we know a little bit more about your story. I just want to ask, how do you differentiate yourself from longtime incumbent John Cornyn and the Attorney General Ken Paxton, besides, just being new to politics and not having that experience because they've been here for a while. So what do you bring to the table besides just a young new face?
Well, not just I think the young new face part of that I think is very, very critical, and I think it's just time for this current generation to hand the reins down to the next generation. I mean, keep in mind, in 10 years, I'm going to be in my early 50s. In 20 years, I'll be in my early 60s, and it's time for me to retire from something and go do something else. So I think that's the number one thing. I think people are really looking for that next generation to step up. But also, look, I am a person that was, again, the first person in the country to endorse President Trump. I was a surrogate for President Trump. I came up under the America First mantra. I fully understand what that means to have true border security. I am not going to author any gun control legislation. In fact, that's going to be one of my first acts as a senator to get rid of red flag laws because, again, it's not about making it difficult for the good guys to get a gun. It's about making sure that we can defend our Second Amendment rights and protect ourselves. Again, this is what our founding fathers wanted. I want energy dominance. I want energy independence. And then most importantly, especially lately, look, this is a Christian nation. This is a constitutional republic. This is not Sharia law in this country. I am the only one of the three that has fought in combat and lived in areas where Sharia law existed. And I can assure you, I will fight tooth and nail to ensure that this does not turn into a country or a state, for that matter, that's run by Sharia law. We have our own constitution. We have our own set of laws. And if you don't come here and are willing to assimilate to what it means to be an American, well, then you need to probably go back to your origin country. I think these are the issues that are most germane to Texans, and that's what I'm going to represent. That's what differentiates me from the other two.
Okay, and then, so let's say this fight becomes a pretty close one. What will be your campaign strategy if the primary heads into a runoff?
Well, again, the strategy is what I'm doing here right now. I'm going to be in Tyler, Texas today. I'm going to be in Dallas in the next few days. I'm going to be in the Panhandle. I'm going to be in Amarillo. I'm going to be in Dallas. You see, this is why this takes a young man to do this, because we're going to travel all over Texas and we're going to outwork our competition. And as long as you continue to have hard work, grit, and determination, guess what? Anything can happen in this great nation. This is not about the color of your skin. It's not about the way you look. In fact, I am the congressman for a white majority district that President Trump would have won by 20 points. And I've been black for my entire life. At the end of the day, no one cares, because what people care about in this country is hard work, grit, determination, and judging people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And by the time I am done taking this message all over Texas, I am very confident that the people of Texas are going to realize that this is the next leader for our future. This is our next senator, and he and Ted Cruz will be a formidable team to not change the outlook of our state, but to change the outlook of our country, and for Texas to lead from the front with two strong senators who are willing to put this country and the state of Texas paramount and first.
Now, I love that you brought up hard work. If elected to the Senate, what would be the first issue that you plan to tackle, or the first piece of legislation that you would prioritize when you get that seat?
First things first, we have to make sure that we don't have any red flag laws here in the state of Texas and here in this country. We have to get rid of those. The next thing is ensuring that we codify President Trump's agenda. President Trump just won the election a year ago. He won every single swing state. He won the popular vote. We were able to keep the House and keep the Senate. It was a landslide victory for the president, because this is actually what the people want to see. People want law and order. People want a secure border. People do not want Sharia law in our constitutional republic. People want us to have energy dominance and energy independence. And given somebody who comes from the energy capital of the world in Texas, energy policy is going to be paramount with that as well. I plan on being the energy senator of the entire world. And again, our economic value starts with the oil and gas energy industry, and everything is in some way tangentially related to that industry. Look, people are feeling the pinch in their pocketbooks. My wife and I see it all the time whenever she goes to the grocery store. I can't believe how much this stuff costs. Thank God for her. But at the end of the day, we have to get costs down. We have to get the price of gasoline down so people can afford to live every single day. And as just a regular red-blooded American, I understand these issues. I am not a swamp creature. I've only been around D.C. for a handful of years, thank God. And I want to make sure that we keep these values present and we keep moving forward with the America First agenda.
Okay, and then I want to talk a little bit about your relationship with President Trump. After being appointed to the U.S. Military Academy Board of Advisors by President Trump in 2025, how do you see your relationship with the president influencing your run for the U.S. Senate?
Again, I mean, President Trump and I have been able to build a relationship on the campaign trail. It was an honor to campaign with him. It was an honor to campaign for him. It was an honor to speak at the Republican National Convention just a little bit over a year ago. And to watch him operate and to see how much he cares about this country is something that not very many people have that kind of insight. And when you're sitting next to him on his plane, you hear about the vision and what he wants to do, how he wants to preserve our nation. My kids absolutely love him. One of my favorite stories was we were visiting Iowa, and my wife was originally from Iowa. And my little daughter ran up to him, tugged on his coat, and said, "Hey, Mr. President, it's a pleasure meeting you." And he scooped up my little 5-year-old, looked at her and said, "Me and your daddy are going to change this country. Thank you for your help and thank you for your support." And he took a picture with her, and it forever changed her life. And so when you see both sides of President Trump, you see the man that's willing to authorize one of the greatest strikes in the history of this country when we were able to get Maduro, and then you see him hugging your 5-year-old daughter, you realize this guy's a grandfather, this guy is a parent, this guy loves his country, but also he understands that he has to do what's necessary to protect our interest and protect our values. And when you spend that much time around him, as I did over the course of the past couple of years, you realize how genuine it is. And that is the kind of agenda that I know needs to continue to manifest itself in our country. And as seeing it firsthand, I'm the person to do it.
Okay, and then lastly, Congressman Hunt, how do you feel having lived in Texas your whole life has made an impact on the man you are and your ability to lead this great state as a senator?
Oh, man, that's a great question.
I know you love Texas, so
I bleed Texas. I bleed Texas. Again, born and raised here, and I went to West Point for undergrad. And what's funny is you go up there, and you always know that somebody is from Texas when you go to West Point because you walk in their room and you'd see a big old Texas flag. There's something about being a Texan. Everything is bigger and better here. And again, somebody that is born and raised as a true Texas conservative, again, in the energy capital of the world in Houston, Texas, born and raised, it's just kind of in my DNA. And what I love about my state, again, is not about what you look like. It is about, are you going to represent our state to the best of your ability? Again, we are judged on merit, grit, hard work, determination. It's just the Texas way. And one thing that I do know is everybody else in the country is jealous of us. But we have to keep them jealous by leading from the front. We have to keep embarrassing every other state because, by God, we're Texas, and by the grace of God, I was born not only in America, but then doubly by the grace of God, God made me a Texan. And so the idea of being able to represent my great state will be one of the greatest honors of my life. But keep in mind, the greatest honor of my life is serving this great nation in combat. I flew 55 combat air missions in Baghdad, and I was one of the guys to ensure that the guys on the ground got home safely. We looked after them, and they looked after us. So getting up and continuing to serve them, continuing to serve this nation, continuing to serve the citizens of Texas will be my greatest honor.
All right, and from hearing that answer, I just actually have one more question to ask you.
Sure,
I know you're
of
from the
course.
Houston area. You've probably been traveling all over the state to, just talk about your campaign and everything like that. What kind of, opinions have you gotten from Texans about your campaign and just about who you are as a Texan? What kind of opinions have you gotten from maybe the north area of Texas, maybe the south end? Does it kind of all blend together, or are you getting a lot of support from Texans? How does that look for you?
I most certainly am. And it was really interesting. Obviously, I travel a lot, and I'm in a lot of airports all over the state of Texas, really kind of all over the country. And this just happened last night. I had votes in D.C., was on an 8 o'clock flight, got on the plane, and there were 2 flight attendants that looked at me and said, "You have both of our votes. Thank you for your service, and thank you for all that you do and all you're going to do for us. And even in traveling around, as people hear more about my message, people hear about more of who I am, people realize this is the next generation of leadership that we are looking for. We're looking for young America First patriots that believe in Texas, that believe in the vision of President Trump and continuing it, not just for 6, not just for 12 years, but again, in perpetuity. And that's the reason why I am running. The outpouring of support that we are getting as people hear about us, hear about our movement, is something that's a huge blessing. I am humbled by it, but I also thank God that Christ put me in a position to be well-bodied enough to be able to take on this very daunting task of becoming the next senator from Texas. God has equipped me. He has prepared me for this in my life. I am ready for the challenge, and we're going to win.
Okay, Congressman. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining me in the KETK Plus studio today. I really appreciate your time.
God bless you, brother. Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.